one thing, yeah, that's the one. There you go.
So we have a presentation prepared for you tonight that I'm going to go through. The slide that you're looking at currently behind me on the screen is the free cash. We typically start with the free cash so we know how much money we have to put towards our operating budget every year. This year, 50% of the available free cash was put towards the budgets. We had an amount of $1,418,350 in certified free cash. We moved $125,000 of that to the Finance Committee's reserve fund for emergencies. That left us a net balance of $1,293,350. 50% of that went to the operating budget. That's $646,675. And the other half of that went to our capital and reserve accounts. One-time capital is $420,338.75. What's important to point out with that is last year we had only 40% of our free cash going into this. The split was 60-40. So the amount of money actually worked out to almost the same dollar figure because of the lower amount of free cash, but we only dropped it 10%. So when you look at the FY26 numbers, they're very similar, but they are different. Stabilization, we put $194,002.50 in our post-retirement benefits, $32,333.75. Sounds like we're getting a little feedback.
We're okay.
Go ahead, Kate. So the money that went into our reserve accounts, we start with the $32,334 going into OPEB. That brings us up to a current balance of, that'll bring us up to a new balance of $484,364. The stabilization fund, there's going to be two actions taken. One at the special town meeting, we're going to put $300,000 back into the stabilization.
assessments are estimated at $220,678. Our overlay allowance we're setting aside is $262,762. Other articles are $163,600. The other articles include assessor's law account, cemetery lot development, and the reserve fund for the town government side of things. Override free cash capital. Steve went over that part of free cash goes into capital, but we also had $500,000 voted in the override that was to go to capital projects as well. That total is $920,339. Total of $5,387,392. As was discussed in the free cash segment, we will be replacing $194,003 into stabilization as an addition, and OPEB will be $32,334. Total reserves are $226,437. So when you take the full revenue, minus the mandatory charges, minus the reserves, the net available revenue is $60,977,278. Yeah, sure. So we will take a quick second to look at this pie chart of where our revenue sources come from, and it might be interesting for people to look at afterwards when they can digest it. And with that, I will have Steve talk about expenditure allocations and budget targets.
Great, thank you. Make sure I'm on the right column here. So expenditures for FY27. Now this is the period from July 1, 2026 through June 30th, 2027. Public schools are estimated at $36,281,955. Fixed cost, $10,143,450. Town government departments, $14,551,873. For a total expenditure budget of $60,977,278. So the allocation formula that's used is the year-over-year increase in available funds is $2,815, less our increase in fixed cost, which is $387,178, minus the override amount, which was our excess capacity of $559,920, which means the net increase available for spending this year was $1,053,717. As with tradition, we split that with the schools 70-30. That meant the schools benefited from $737,602, and the town benefited from $316,115. Sure.
BCTV, your mic is on, and it's causing feedback for people watching. I'm told BCTV's on.
Okay. So the target budget for the schools, $36,231,955. The town government net of additional override was $13,391,953. The override money that was not spent last year, excess capacity, that money was set aside to cover the firefighters through the SAFER grant that expired, an ambulance lease and the salary for our grant writer. That amount is $559,921. When you add that into the town government line item budgets, it's $14,551,874 total. So if we go to the next slide, this is just a breakdown of the town spending. And again, this is something, it's a visual to help people understand where our money's going. And in my opinion, it's going where it needs to go and is being spent appropriately. So the slide after that are budget highlights. There's quite a few. Now, these are on the town side. I'll give the school superintendent an opportunity to talk about some of the things in his budget once I get through this slide. But in this budget, not only did we have an increase in available funding, we also reallocated funds from within the budgets to higher priority items. We looked at areas where we felt that money wasn't being spent, it wasn't necessary. So we did a lot of shuffling, if you will, and we were able to reestablish the police lieutenant position that was cut about 10 years ago. Right now, that's at 50%. Which means we'll fill it halfway through the year, and then next year with available revenue, we'll fund the full 12 months. Similarly, in our fire department, we've been operating without a deputy fire chief. So we were able to find funding for that position for the half year. So that'll start January 1, and then next year at this time, we'll have funding in place for the full 12 months. Again, full funding for the firefighter salaries. Originally, we hired firefighters through a federal grant, knowing that the day would come we would have to fund them. We're adding 5 hours of time to our grant writer, her weekly schedule. We're going to add, there's a typo in here. I apologize. I meant to correct it. It's my fault. 6 additional hours for a communication manager. We have 5 additional hours for a library technician, and these are weekly. We have a town sheriff for a school resource officer.
Steve, can I ask a question?
Yep.
How many hours does a grant writer have right now, as well as how many hours does a communication manager have right now? Oh,
27 and a half.
you on the spot.
2:30.
Grant writer has 27 and a half hours right now. And the communications director at this moment has 19 hours per week scheduled or budgeted. Mm-hmm.
So this will go up.
So, yeah,
Okay.
communications will go to 25 hours a week, and grant writer will go to 32 and a half. Yep. And I know there may be some conversation about these next two. We can, hold off until the end on that. Community and Economic Development Planner, part-time. This is intended to be a 15-hour-a-week position. And we also have funding for a finance director stipend. This was calculated based on a full-time position, the delta between that and our existing financial positions here in the town, set at a 50% rate. We've also had some significant software licensing increases this year. We're also going to be implementing AI technology through our department, so we're going to be picking up a lot of additional software licensing for that. We converted to Microsoft 365, a cloud-based email system, so we're going to be looking for additional cloud storage. Our law account is traditionally overspent, so we've been able to identify some funding to increase the law account. We have a 12.5% increase this year in health insurance. Let me see what I missed here. There's been some increases in human resources training line items. We've been sending more employees to more coursework, as well as there's just been an increase in the cost there. Let's see. Did I miss anything? Yep. Oh, yeah, we had an IT position in our computing department, moving from 19 hours to 35 hours. The senior center has fundraised and has a considerable amount of money to put towards a new van, so we were able to include funding for the remainder of that through a lease. We've increased the firefighter overtime budget. We did include a very small amount of money for the DEI committee to use for events. And that is it for highlights. There's a lot of other adjustments that you'll see in the line item budgets when they're finally published, but most of them are insignificant. But they add up over time. And we were able to fund a lot of these highlights. Let me go over some of the things that we moved money out of, some of the bigger things. Again, these are highlights, they're not all inclusive. The assessor's budget, the wages are going down. Our long-term assessor has retired and the replacement's coming in at a lower rate. Same with the highway department four-person. The paving budget at the DPW is being reduced. We've also, at the same time, have seen a sharp increase in state aid towards paving, so it's a bit of an offset. We now have a very robust capital improvement plan, and some of our computing department equipment needs have been moved out of the operating budget and will be in the capital budget from now on. We were able to move a laborer position out of the DPW into our stormwater enterprise. There was a reduction. The fire department was looking for a new command vehicle. We've delayed that by a year. The police department, we've had a reduction in part-time wages, automotive repairs, and radio repairs. We've eliminated some of the building supplies out of the town hall budget, which we're going to be taking out of capital from now on. There's a reduction in the cost of the facility on East Walnut Street that the EMS department, the fire department's currently using as living quarters. That's going to be converted to a computing department office, and there'll be a reduction in operating expense. We've moved some landfill engineering out of the town budget into the enterprise account for the transfer station. We're making a final payment on a pickup truck lease. We've reduced our tree removal budget slightly. And we've also reduced some of the budget in our pool. The items that we had funded are being paid by the school department, so we had it tied up in two places, and my understanding from our rec director is that the school department's agreeable to continue paying those. So those are some of the highlights. Those are the big numbers. There's a lot of smaller things that you would find in there, but those are the significant ones that I think are worth mentioning. Excuse me. Looking ahead to next year, we are absolutely going to be looking for funding for a chief of staff or assistant town manager position that's yet to be defined by the select board. We need to make the first year payment on our emergency service dispatchers agreement. When we regionalized with Wilbraham, it was through a federal grant, and again, that's going to taper off over the next few years. And we're also going to be looking for some part-time staff to support the human resources department, amongst other things. So, next slide, Kate. So with that, I know, an approximate $61 million budget sounds daunting. So a lot of people ask, what are our taxes here in Belchertown? And we do have a comparison. Now, we are in FY26, so FY27 numbers that we're talking about tonight. The tax, average tax bill, the tax levy, all of that's not calculated yet. That'll come during the recap next fall. So FY26 numbers, you can see where we land with that. Belchertown, higher than some, lower than others. The total tax levy is, again, higher than some, lower than others. So that's more just for your information. You can always look at that on your own time. We can pop over to the next slide. All right, so I'm going to turn this one over to the Chair of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, Eric Weiss. He's going to, there's a few slides here, and he's going to go over these with you. You good? Uh-oh.
Does this mean I have to sing? Whoa, you don't want me to sing. I will. I am not using that microphone.
No singing.
Can somebody just push the button for him?
I will say that one of the items that is in the capital budget is redoing the stuff in this room, so I think everybody will welcome that. First of all, I want to thank John for the cookies. I thought about pizza, but cookies are a much easier place to go. I also want to thank Eric Bernardin and Michael Hoffler, who are the other two members of the Capital Planning Committee. We could use two more. Did I say that enough? We could use two more members, so anybody who knows anybody that wants to be part of it, please. I also want to thank Mr. Williams and his staff. They have been great to work with. We've gotten a lot done. I also want to give a special shout out to Michael Hoffler. He was the one who put together the spreadsheets. And he is a nice, funny man, but he also has a heart of gold, and he did some good stuff for us. I want to make sure he gets his honorable mention here. I also want to applaud one thing. When I heard that, Mr. Williams say we have a balanced budget, I want to say this is March, and we're talking about a balanced budget. That didn't happen when I was on school committee very often, so I appreciate hearing that. So to start going through what we did, our process, we rated items in 3 different categories: high priority, medium priority, low priority. So different departments would bring their what their needs were to us, their capital needs, and we would rank them in accordance with the entire town. We wouldn't just say the police budget is one thing, the fire department is another budget, but we have to look at the needs of the entire town as we do our evaluation. So we went through quite a process where there was a submission from each one of the department heads. So we got submissions for this year and for the 4 years coming after that. So for the first time ever, I think in Belchertown's history, we have some sort of semblance of a 5-year plan that didn't exist before, which is really healthy and a good place to plan from, and is a good tool for any of the town committees to have. We received a total of requests of $1,781,800. We also know that the total funds available in the 27 budget is $920,000, leaving us a gap of $861,461. So that just says that our needs outpace our available funds, which is nothing new to anybody in this room. We know that's a fact. This just gives, again, these are the first times we're able to really look at this. This, again, is the second year where we'll be able to say, okay, we had this much money, but what we really needed was that much money, so we have to push these projects off to the future, whether we want to or not. And then we have to start again next year with the fact that we have what's next year's projects, and we have to look at what was this year's projects that were unfunded and how we can make them move ahead. So, yeah.
Esther, the people online can't hear.
All right, I'll repeating everything now. Tell me when, Esther. You keep going? All right, so what you see in front of you is our rankings of the top 17 projects. H means high priority, M means medium priority. So you can see the different things. And therefore, in the top one, you can see the polling pads. That was a request of the town clerk, that our equipment is getting old and we need to replace some, and we need to be up to date. And with all the questions about elections and everything else, it was important to get that funded and funded quickly. There's security issues at Town Hall that need to be addressed, and Mr. Williams informed us of that. There is a required regulation on replacing these covers at the bottom of the pool, and that had to be done in accordance with regulation. Everything from there on down is not so much required regulatory-wise, but is importance in terms of level of importance. The only other one that really it fits into that is the personal protective equipment of the fire department. They need to have it PFAS-free, or, yeah, that's right, as they're using it, because their equipments are starting to get old. So that number, that $184,000, is a replacement for one suit each for each firefighter, basically, the way they get dressed when they head off to fight the fires. All the other pieces that you see in there are are things that we require updating, JBMS bathrooms renovations, the acoustic study for this room. There's a number of ventilation projects that you see up there, and one of the discussions we had, which I'll do a little bit more, is the idea of bundling projects to make sure that we're getting the best deal for the town as we move ahead. And as we talk about things like bonding for money for the town, it's a good measure to know what you have and what time cycle is it on? Is it a 10-year product you're talking about, a 20-year product, et cetera? So that is what we basically put out as the first 17. And that basically, if we went exactly with the top first 17, that gets you to using all of the money that is available in terms of capital planning money for this year, and doesn't leave very much, like $24 left over for next year. Go ahead.
So one thing I want to point out is the number 2 item on that list was the town hall security cameras and entry system. That money has already been located through our finance committee, so that item, while we show it on the list as a high priority, will not be part of the funding package, so it does adjust things a little bit. But I did want to show it that it was reviewed and it was ranked, as well as all the other projects.
The highest of all the high priorities, saying that these are the top 9, these are the ones that we know are must-dos in terms of everything that's out there. So it's a little bit of a repeat from the one before, but it really shows these are the high priority ones. These are the ones we designated as high priority, and we want to see the town do them in the coming year. As a quick note for everybody to know, there are actually a total of 29 items on our complete list. So what you've seen is the top 17, and then we went and prioritized the first priority group. So there. So what we're saying here is that in fiscal year 27, this is the one we're coming into, the estimated needs were $1,007,000. The funds available were $920,000. The gap was $898,000. That's what gets carried over to the next year. We have an anticipated number of $7,896,000 for fiscal year 28. We don't know the funds available at this time. That's what we try to figure out, and we don't know what the gap's going to be. But the intent of this table is, this is something we're going to fill out over time as a way to show what we've put off, what has been funded this year, and what have we put off to the following years to make it all work. So again, what this also says is that we're in this place of, yeah.
I'm sorry, there's, yep, you're my best. Okay. Go ahead, keep going.
All right. So as we enter the third year, we know that this process of the capital planning committee is now being integrated into the way that the select board, the finance committee thinks about the budget. That's a really good, healthy thing for Belchertown in terms of allowing for the evaluation, to take the pressure off the town manager and everybody else in terms of prioritizing everything. That's our role, and that's important. And if the town disagrees, we can have a discussion about what the items are. But it gives us a really easy discussion point to have in terms of how we go about doing things. And that the other thing here is that a 5-year plan is significant. It's significant in a couple of ways. One, it's something the town needs. And two, as far as Department of Revenue is concerned, they love seeing that. That's something they want to see the town have in place, which is why they recommended creating the capital committee and having it work with the other committees in town. This just shows our process. I kind of went over it already. We took the forms that existed, updated them. We got them back. We then also sent out for 28 through 31 for all departments. And we also want to make sure that everybody understands that our preliminary estimates for the 5-year budget are just that. They're estimates. We're not holding anybody, feet to the fire on, oh no, you said last year there was going to be this. This is our best guess, best estimate right now of what the next 5 years look like. So obviously, we're going through this for the first or second time. There are things that need to be addressed as we look through time, and certain issues that need to be taken on as the committee moves forward. And so there's a need to understand how many capital items are currently embedded within operating budgets. This is not meant to be a negative. It is just historically things that our capital items were put inside budgets because that's where they had to go. They wanted to get them funded. That's where the department heads put them. We're not saying it's a bad thing to pull them out and make them capital because it prioritizes the need. It shows everybody what the need is. It also frees up money in the operating budget for those departments. So it's something that is, over the long term, is really healthy for the budget cycle. The identifying opportunities to combine, piggyback, whatever you want to call it, bundle projects to reduce borrow costs and to make for bonding more attractive as we go through the process. That's something that I know Mr. Williams is working on right now. That's something that moving ahead, the town has to maintain a certain level of expenditure on this for bond ratings and everything else. So this is good, and we're also identifying what those needs are and where those capital needs are within that process. We know that there's going to be capital needs that exceed funding, and therefore, the more definition as we go through time on the projects that we have will be important. So if we didn't get enough information on a project this year, then next year when it comes back up, hopefully we'll have more projects and it'll allow us to delineate and describe that better and where to prioritize it in the process. Another one that's key to us is that we need some clarification on Jabesh Brook Middle School as a capital plan, because there's a significant difference between investing in 10 years or 20 years, et cetera, in the building. How much does the school committee want to invest? How much does the town want to invest? This is a significant question for Belchertown moving forward, for a lot of reasons. I know that there's a lot of history to this question. The point of this being there is that if we're going to borrow money to invest in the school, it's important for everybody to agree that that building is valid, or it can be in place for 20 years to do that. Or are we talking 10 years, or whatever? And that, I think that's an open discussion that the boards need to have to get that right, because it's an asset to the community. It's something that we know is a challenge because of the roof, and there's driveway issues up there, and there's some other issues that need to be dealt with. But it's more important to know what this town's priority is on this piece of this building and how it needs to move forward. We want to internally make a much clearer process for managing and tracking the capital numbers. And the reason that we say that is, one, we want to fully comply with open meeting law as we do this. But one of our challenges, and this is just to share with all of you as you share information amongst your board members, we can't just have a Dropbox or a Google Drive to put everything in, because if I go in there and I comment on it and then somebody else comments on it, boom, you're breaking open meeting law. You can't do that. But there has to be a way when you're addressing numbers, especially in a budget, in a budgetary fashion. And this is a question for the state as much as anybody else. How do you do that as a committee without breaking the rules? There's got to be a way to interpret the data, interpret the information, have a discussion about it without me being in trouble for going in and then Eric going in, et cetera, and trying to figure it out. So we're bringing this up as one that we know is not just Belchertown, but one that the state needs to address as we move through this new electronic environment of how you address that. And so we would welcome anybody who wants to talk about that too, as a way to identify something that we can bring up to our legislators, things like that. It's one of those challenges. One of the other issues that we have looked at in the capital budget is the effect of Cold Spring School. Again, it's an investment that's going sort of off the books by the way the agreement is with Pathfinder, but there are things that are within the capital budget that might be affected, like as we shift grades and the investments that are being made in the various schools. Is all of that money accounted for in the capital budget or in the school budget, or how we do it? Have we captured all that money? And then there's the other question about have we confirmed the way the deal works that we're actually getting the money? I now understand that it's where basically the user of the building is responsible for the building. So that's really important in terms of Belchertown not being responsible. But I just want there to be clarity. Again, it's from a capital planning point of view, going for the long term of what we do. And then last but not least, I'll say it again, we have 3 members and we're working hard, and we don't mind doing this for the town. It would sure be nice to get 2 more members. And I know I'm preaching to the choir in this room with everybody in it, but we could sure use that. And I don't know if anybody at home can hear me right now and me asking for it, but I'll try again. Lastly, I would like to, do I have one more slide or not? I don't know. Okay. The last thing I'd like to say is that we have been trying to create a process for doing this that is fair and equitable and transparent, and I think we have. We have tried to make it work that everybody can see our numbers. We have our reports that we give everybody. Our goal is to put the numbers out there in actually as transparent a manner as possible for the sake of the town. And that's what we've tried to do. So hopefully this answers as many questions as it possibly can, and therefore going into next year we'll have better numbers and we'll have a better system, and we'll keep working it out. And one more time I want to say that Mr. Williams and his staff have been great to work with to get this done, so we appreciate it.
All right, so I have one more slide before I ask Mr. Cameron to make a few comments.
Can I ask a quick question? Can you just briefly talk about how you rank the requests?
We would hear the information from the department head, from each department head, as to what they thought their most important projects were, and then break it down from there in terms of what was required under regulation, under rules and regulations, and what was a critical need of the community, and what if we didn't do this, what were the repercussions if we didn't do it? And those are the criteria that kind of got mixed into the evaluation process as we looked at them, just in a way to prioritize them. And what we did is we took all the projects and almost like, we would measure each one against all of them, not just against itself or against its department. So it was, we know it's challenging. Some people aren't going to love all the decisions we made, but that's not our role. And so we did the best we could with the information we had. The top 5 are probably fairly interchangeable with each other in terms of which one you want to put first, second, third, whatever. But in terms of the needs of the community, in terms of capital needs and showing that there's $26 million worth of capital needs that we have to address over 5 years, that's real, so.
I just want to thank the Capital Planning Committee for your work. As liaison, I have been privileged to watch the process and how thoughtful and caring you've gone about this, and with Steve's guidance. I just want to recognize you, because we didn't have something like this before, and it became whatever was on fire kind of got fixed. Taking a much more thoughtful approach to what our capital planning needs are is new for Belchertown, and you're the leaders that are doing it. And just from me, I want to say how grateful I am.
So let's talk about $26 million worth of capital items that are unfunded at the moment. One of the options to speed this process up is borrowing. And this year, we know that we're going to be making the final payment on some bonds that the town has. It's going to free up approximately $250,000 a year for payments. So at this town meeting, we're going to ask to have an authorization to borrow to account for that debt service so that we can maintain that level of money going into paying for bonds. So the last slide is basically a breakout of what we could do with that money. We have an option for a 10-year bond or a 20-year bond in front of you, and we essentially backed our way into it. We said, if we were to borrow for 10 years or if we were to borrow for 20 years, how much could we borrow and maintain a $250,000 a year payment? And that's what's in front of you tonight. What we may do, again, we're going to be looking at this capital list. We're going to be looking at FY27 items, FY28 items, and trying to determine what makes sense to borrow. Some items will only have a 10-year lifespan, others will have a 20-year beyond, so we'll work that into the equation. We'll come up with the amount of projects and the amount of money that we can afford, and we're going to move forward this year, and hopefully we'll do that again next year. The DLS was very clear that in order to maintain a good bond rating with the state, we should maintain our level of debt and or add to it. I think the recommendation was that we actually should have more debt on the books. So we're going to be working through that. There's a couple of big projects that people are probably curious about, more specifically the Jabesh Brook Middle School, the roof, the windows and doors. Those probably will not be up for consideration this fiscal year because the MSBA program hasn't weighed in yet on whether they'd be eligible. And if we can get the funding through them, there's generally a grant portion that comes with that or a lower interest rate. So those projects will likely be a year out. But in the meantime, I'll be working with the Capital Improvement Planning Committee and the Select Board to develop and finalize the list of projects that we're going to have presented for not only the money that's set aside for capital in our annual operating budget, but for the borrowing as well. So that's all I have. Mr. Cameron, did you have anything you wanted to add to this before we open it up to questions?
Do either of the boards want me to go over the presentation that I presented at the last meeting? I know some people were there, some people weren't there. After we revised the numbers, I believe it was $49,000 that we had a cut. I'm hoping to take that from health insurance if it's going to come in at 13.5%. So it's certainly up to the boards. I have hard copies. It all depends on what you would like. I don't want to waste time.
I think that it would be a good idea, because then we'd have a balanced report from everyone.
Okay.
Did anybody disagree?
Yeah, can you email a copy of that to Kate? So Heather she has some copies for you. And as she's doing that, we'll email the presentation to Kate so everybody in the audience can see. And I'll go over some of the highlights of the budget.
I just want to ask a technical question. Can people hear Brian online?
I have one of those mics,
Oh, you
a special mic. It's Kate Nadeau. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Budget cuts I couldn't afford, no.
I have it somewhere.
And just so everybody knows, you're going to need a magnifying glass for the line item. Just trying to save paper.
Will they be larger on the big screen?
I don't have those for this. They will be on our website with the presentation, but Nadeau, N-A. Take off the K, just do K.
I probably don't have it because I never
N-A-D.
EAU.
E-A-D.
Belchertown.
Yeah. Everybody eat another cookie. See, John? Take a break.
Very good.
I'll save mine for later.
They're gluten-free.
I know, they're really good. I've had them before. Nicole.
Is it going through or?
It's a little slow.
You want my thumb right?
He sent it.
Once the capital updates the Wi-Fi in this room, it'll be much better.
You got to update the Wi-Fi.
It's
Yeah.
coal-fired.
So I'll go over the highlights. cookies are not staying here. All set, Kate? Okay, so as always, we start with our strategic outcomes. We come together with a group of parents, teachers. Sorry, Kate, next slide. And we got together this year. There was a committee of parents, educators, administrators. We identified these for being our strategic outcomes for a five-year strategic plan. Go ahead, Kate. In each of the categories, the four categories, we identify, implement, and then evaluate and adjust. So you will see that through the next 5 years of our strategic plan. Total enrollment, we always talk about total enrollment by grade. We like to share that information every year. As you know, we are on a downward spiral of having less students enrolled. So we always like to provide that information. As you can see in 2018-19, 2267, in 25-26, 1965. There's two, we shared the two Belchertown enrollment projections. One was done by MSBA when we were looking, God bless you, we were looking at Jabesh Brook, and the others done internally. And basically, we just wanted to show that either way, we come out in the same ballpark, 1853 or 1830. According to, that's okay, Kate. According to MSBA, their projections said that we were going to stabilize in 2028. We can take that for whatever it's worth. We'll have to wait and see what happens in 2028. Thanks, Kate. School choice, we currently have 145 students in school choice. As you know, last year, 25-26, or this year, was really our lowest number that we opened due to the declining enrollment and the reduction of staff. We just couldn't open that many students. Once they're with us till they graduate. We do fill the spots in the primary grades faster than we do at Jabesh Brook in the high school. I'd just like to provide this information. School choice revolving enrollment. As you know, we have school choice funds. I say this all the time. School choice funds are operational, so we use the majority of our school choice monies for operational expenses. We talked about the response to declining enrollment. I'm not going to read them all. I know we've been through this. I think it's important to know that our overall enrollment has declined 18.9%. The number of homerooms declined 18.3%. So we went from 60 homerooms to 49 homerooms. We eliminated a number of Jabesh Brook positions last year. And between FY21 and FY25, we've eliminated 25 positions within that time. We're continuing to pursue for grants. We encourage teachers to apply for the BEF grants. I can't say enough of the Belchertown Educational Foundation. They are wonderful. We've increased bus fees, athletic fees. We've even started charging for caps and gowns. We brought an HVAC in-house, and it continues to go down. And I think the two at the bottom, just mentioned, as everybody knows, is we ended up closing Tadgell Building. Well, we didn't close it, but we relocated IT staff to the high school, and we gave the building back, I guess, to the town. And the big conversation is the closing of Cold Spring School in June. Class sizes, we like to put this out just so everybody knows what the average class size is. That's currently, it's a little different. We're not trying to not give you the true transparency of middle school and high school. But that all depends on electives and what students take. Are they in band, are they not in band? And so the core subjects, math, English, science, social studies, is about 20. And the high school is about 17, depending. And this is all regular. Student support teacher, we just like to share this information. The note at the bottom, within the layoffs in 2024, the difference between Belchertown and the state average rose 1.3. So that's the highest disparity since 2002 and 11. And we kind of knew that because of the cuts we were making. I can't stress this enough. Student numbers are going down, but student needs are going up through English language learners, pre-K enrollment, the number of students we have coming in that need one-to-one support for being diagnosed with autism is growing. We're working on absenteeism. We've actually done a very good job on that, but we want to keep that going. Can't stress this enough. Mental and behavioral health needs in the schools have continued to skyrocket. We are seeing more and more students that are having to be sent to the ER for hospitalization. Next thing we know, they're being transported to a in-treatment center. Then they come back to school. We have to have a reentry meeting. That means sometimes we have to put additional staff with them. We have to move them to a more restrictive program. I know everybody's well aware with that, of those things. It's not all school related. We deal with a lot of things that are occurring outside of the school day and at home with families, which carries over to school and causes a disruption in the educational process. We also added about the student performance in the English language arts and math. For special education, we'll be talking about this tomorrow at school committee too. We were identified as needing targeted instruction, meaning that our special ed students aren't making as much gains. Part of that was a coding issue that we realized, but we're continuing to move forward with this partnership with DESE for all students to see what we can do to help improve academic instruction and interventions. Per pupil expenditure, we talked about this a lot. We also put in the recent override, so I'll share that information with you. When we developed this budget, we knew that we were going to close Cold Springs, so we planned for it. We had asked, give us another year. We instituted some one-year positions only. So in addition to the 25 positions we've laid off from FY21, we've also reduced 15 positions this year for the pre-K to 8 realignment. We reduced operational and maintenance costs. We reduced instructional materials and classroom supplies. And some of the things that we didn't know that weren't in yet about subscriptions and that we just did it based on historical information. That may come back that we need to increase or we don't need to increase, but that's what we had to do for the time being. We always share the federal and state grants. Remember, these are entitlement grants, so we get them every year. Our competitive grants, which is part of Sean's job as the assistant superintendent. This is what he's brought in since 2020. $2.2 million in additional grants. These are all competitive grants, so you have to write the grant, you have to meet the requirements, and you're not guaranteed to get these grants year after year. So. Okay, so this is our school choice budget plan. Once again, as I mentioned, The majority of our school choice budget goes to operation. So maintenance, technologies, there are some positions in there. We offset tuitions, and that is our spending for FY27, the 1.1 million. Excuse me. So I think it's important to know that, when we reduced or prepared the FY27 budget, knowing that we are closing Cold Springs, if you look at this little graph, we saved $496,000. In addition to that, I know this can seem confusing sometimes, but that's just Cold Spring. And when it says positions at Cold Springs, those are only positions at Cold Springs. When you add in the grades 1 through 8, there's other positions that are going to be affected because we had to reduce class sizes to make this work. Not necessarily class sizes, class sections to make this work. So overall, closing Cold Springs, doing the reorganization, that saved us $930,000, which I think is important because if we didn't do it, we would be asking for $930,000 more. So this was our level service budget when we first prepared this. We do it by DESI code, so administration and all that. And if you want me to break it down, I can. Administration is not, administrators in a 4.3% increase. It's a lot of things that are in that category. As you can see, benefits, health insurance, once again, for the town, for us, they go up. The 7,000 series, that big increase is because we got a new lease on a truck. And tuitions, we had some students that graduated out of out-of-district programming, or there's one coming back in-house, so that helps us with tuitions. That is a moving target because we could get a student that moves in and then we have to do something and that could go. So overall, that request was 2.4% increase. Excuse me. When we talked and we met at our last meeting, there was some conversation. We gave the $200,000 back from health insurance. The town did $100,000. We all worked together. We agreed, and with the new numbers, we only had to reduce our number by the $49,273. And as of right now, in discussing with Mark and hearing about health insurance, we're hoping that we can take that from the health insurance if it only comes in at 13.5. So that's where we stand. There's no new positions, there's no new anything in that budget. That's just what we're moving forward. If numbers changes or something changes, we'll reassess that. We still, I struggle and, with student needs, I still think there's a need for interventionists in the elementary level to provide tiered support. We haven't been able to do that over the years, but we'll get there. So that's it in a nutshell. As I said in your folders too, I gave you a copy of the line item budget as I do every year when I present. Certainly it's a lot, so if you have any questions, let me know. But I don't know if you have any questions for us.
Did you just clarify positions? You didn't cut anybody, just to make sure. I just want to clarify for the public.
We did not cut anybody. We hired one-year positions, and they were only guaranteed a job until into 26, June 26. And that's why I just wanted to be clear, John, I put 15 positions, not staff.
I just saw.
Yeah.
It looked like you cut. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked that because people will be asking.
Thank you.
And there are no layoffs with this budget.
John, are you using a special mic?
No, sorry.
And that was just something we did with the 3-year increase across the board.
Let's see if I can do it. Oh, look at that. I was also curious, Mr. Cameron, does this include any costs for retrofitting or renovating the buildings with all of the moving around of students?
It does not.
Do you have any ideas what you're expected to have available to make those changes?
So we purchased some of that stuff last year, like at Cold Springs, we're working with Pathfinder. We have to put smaller toilets in the bathroom for preschoolers. So we've had the fixtures, so that's taken care of. Like I said, Pathfinder is working with us. Right now, there's very simple things, dropping coat hangers down and stuff of that. No big dollar amounts. I think the big dollar amounts are going to come in when, and we're going to have to find it within our budgets because that's just how it is. I have to pay staff for moving. So I'm going to have to pay staff a certain amount of time to move. We need a moving company to make this all happen. So that's our biggest expenditure. We're kind of keeping track of it. So once we have those numbers, I can share just with if people are curious, but that's the biggest expense. Yep.
I guess just a quick question I have is, did we come up with the per pupil expenditures? Did we
Oh, I thought
run
it
those
was,
numbers?
sorry, Mike, I thought it was someone online. Did we come up with it?
Right, so where did we get those numbers from? Is
So
that something,
that comes from the state, DESI.
okay,
But the one for the 800 for the tax base, we estimated that.
okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
The 930,000 in savings, where is that factored in? Is it,
That's all throughout the budget.
so we went from 35 million, we cut 936, and then we went up to 36,281?
Yes, because you had health insurance, you have collage, you have all of that.
I have a question about price per pupil. You have a comparison of Belchertown to the state, right? Is there a comparison of price per student spent that is regional?
Oh, yeah, I can get you that information. We presented that last year at our budget.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking
Yeah, no, I
about-
can share that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Much longer, right?
Sorry, I have one more question. The price per student, how do you expect that to change with the closure of Cold Spring? Will it change much? Not this year, but going forward?
Are you talking about the pupil expenditure? Yeah, it's at the bottom. We estimated, I believe it was another $800. Let me just get to it. So we figured it would roughly add 800 to the per pupil expenditure. Down at the bottom where it says per pupil expenditure.
What page are you on?
13, which would leave us 89th percentile of Massachusetts schools.
The closure of Cold Spring, will that affect the per pupil?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Let me check on that. It's a great question.
I mean, it won't
It
go up
won't.
as, it won't
It-
go up as much, it'll go up less, because
Right.
that $930,000 worth of cuts is what gets factored in to the total foundation budget that gets divided by the number of pupils. So whatever we spend on the pupils is still gonna be there. It's gonna be reduced by that amount. It's gone up by 2.25% over last year.
Yes, I did that. I just wanted to double check.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, do we want a motion to adjourn?
We need to approve the budget first.
Oh, you have questions, okay.
We can ask questions about your presentation as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
So these are pretty simple and straightforward. And the main one comes to capital. So capital is a townwide consideration regardless of department. And we're going to be coming into another 250,000 average at the end of this year to be added. We're assuming that that's on top of what we already have scheduled yearly for capital, so that will increase by another $250,000 next year.
No, that's not necessarily how it's going to work. We are going to maintain debt, so we're going to borrow somewhere between $2 and $3 million, and we're going to take items off of the capital list. But once we borrow that money, we're obligated to those projects for the next 10 to 20 years. So the $250,000 would be an annual payment out of our annual operating budget. And that is existing town money. It would not be what we would consider a debt exclusion or an override. That's money that we currently have allocated towards that debt, and we're going to be paying off those bonds, so we need to reallocate it towards new debt. So essentially, we're going to be shortening the list of projects that are backlogged currently.
That's my understanding as well, that we'll be picking things off the capital list to put them on the bond list, and therefore, we won't count them twice in the end.
Well, that was my point. So we're not, eventually down the road, we're not going to be taking that $250,000 out of an existing capital to pay for this bond cost. It's just going to stay in this exact same, and it'll be above and beyond what we're going to be considering annually.
Right, let's say we have a list of 10 items like we do, and we take 2 of them and put them on the bond list. Capital planning, yeah.
So in the future, there may be consideration towards taking some of the money that's been set aside for capital annually and rolling that into borrowing, but right now, that's not a consideration.
So the next one, so when this original bond was taken, this $250,000 paid for a hell of a lot more than we can buy with it now. Is there consideration to go up with that? I mean, it's 3.25 over 20 years is not a lot of money in the big picture.
So I did look into whether or not we should try to increase that number. The issue I ran into is, I think the planning for a lot of these capital items is just beginning. As I mentioned earlier, the roof and the windows at Jabersbrook Middle School. There's projects on the town side. They're not fully vetted. They're not fully planned. They're not quite shovel ready. So this year, we're going to stick with the 250. What I would like to do is next year, identify money within our operating budget and go after additional borrowing for capital. So instead of doing it all at once, we're going to spread it out. And that'll give us some time to vet the projects, plan them a little bit better, make sure that we can complete them. And at the same time, see what the MSBA is going to do for us and any other sources of income we can find.
Any other questions for Steve?
I think it would be good if we could all have something sent to us, a schedule of when future bonds are coming up for payment in full, so we have an idea of what's opening up in the future.
Yeah, we can work on getting that to you. I think it's important to, again, stress that we have a school building that has a lot of needs, and, you know, I don't want to put all of our borrowing capacity into this year's planning without the knowledge of where we're going with that school. Jabez Brook Middle School is going to be in use for some time. So we really need to keep that in mind.
So I was just wondering about some of the highlights that you discussed, in particular, what sort of the needs driving some of the new positions. So the Community and Economic Development Planner, Finance Director stipend. Could you just talk about the needs behind those requests?
Sure, I'll start with the Economic Development Planner. We have been talking and shifting focus towards more economic development, essentially business growth, to build a larger tax base. It's something that I've been charged with. There's a lot of action items that the Select Board want me to follow through on, and I have limited capacity. If we want to take it up a notch and see if we can actually capitalize on economic development, it's probably time we bring in some support. We've been working with consultants through grants and ARPA funding. This is going to be a step above that. It's going to focus more on business growth, economic development, act as a liaison between my office and the EDIC, establish relationship with builders and developers and business owners to try to bring more interest in the town. I'm doing the best I can with it, but I can't do it all. Back in 2021, the Department of Local Services recommended that the town hire a finance director / assistant town accountant. Assistant town manager. There's been conversations with the Select Board about what that would look like, whether it should be a chief of staff position, whether we should include some of the other items in there, like grant writing, some communications. What we have failed to do is get past the starting line. Many of the communities that I work with and talk to, their finance director position is an add-on to one of the 3 financial positions in their town. Some towns have 4, but for the most part, towns have an assessor, they have a treasurer collector. Sometimes that's 2 positions, sometimes it's 1, and they have a town accountant. One of those 3 oftentimes act as a finance director to have authority over financial matters, to be more involved with the day-to-day operations and finance as a whole. What I'm proposing this year is that we start that way. We see where it goes, and then we reevaluate. That'll give us some time to start working on whether or not the position of assistant town manager is the chief of staff, or what we're going to call it, what those duties are, and whether they're going to have financial in that job responsibility or some other item. But at least this gets the position established. We can work through some of the glitches, and we can pivot when we need to.
If I can just also add that the economic driver has shifted from a group of dedicated volunteers and a consultant whose contract ran out to Steve to be the leading representative in terms of what Belchertown has to offer to the region. That said, it's a lot of new to be done in terms of setting up meetings, making very first introductions, writing letters of inquiry, all of that, that Steve really needs someone who can do that piece so that he can concentrate on making the sell, if you will, and strengthening partnerships with the communities around us, businesses around us, including our own businesses. And that's why it's so important.
One of the keys to growing the tax base in an equitable way is to make sure that there's a balance between residential and business revenues that come in. And the only way you can affect the business side is by trumpeting it, talking about it, getting people to come to town and see what the values are that they get here.
So I got just one more thing I want to, sorry.
Yes, Brian?
So back in December, the Finance Committee, we discussed and decided to recommend to the Select Board that we move forward with multi-year strategic planning as part of every process of a budget. We did not go any deeper into it because we didn't think that, we're not a policy-making board, but it's pretty much established with the Capital Improvement Planning Committee with a 5-year plan, so that, I mean, that would be a great place to start anyway. But one of the main items we talked about, and it comes back to capital again, is a lot of our departments are using operating expense to pay for capital. Obviously not a topic for right now, but we need to look at this in the future, we really should, at the best way to spend that money. And if we're really looking seriously at borrowing money, we want to identify what these departments are spending, find out what we can do. Like if split projects here, you can only do so many a year, and the costs are extremely high doing it that way, when you could consolidate them and do much lower, as
Eric, do you want to speak to that?
And
Because I know that's what you're doing now.
Well, what I can say is that at the last meeting of the Capital Planning Committee, which was last week, one of the things that we finally realized is that we had met our obligation for this year's budget cycle, that we had a plan, we had the top 20 or 17, we had the monies all figured out. So this then gives us the next opportunity of beginning to explore exactly what Brian's talking about, which is how do we help the town strategize for the future based on what we know, and what does that look like? So we'll be bothering a lot of people on that subject, hopefully.
I would also say that this is a cultural shift where departments want to, salt away some money in case something should happen, and they want to be covered. And so I do think there's going to be a level of education and trust that needs to be built where departments feel that they really can disclose discretionary money that really ought to be in capital planning.
I would actually also say that I think it's somewhat of a relief for department heads to come before us, explain in a transparent way what their needs are, and know that they're being examined and supported, as opposed to not really being able. So, and that's not meant as a criticism, it's just we're in a different place than we were.
The other thing I think we are also looking at is succession planning. And that's a very real thing that's happening. We have employees that are going to be retiring, and we want to make sure that there is some cross-training in place, or second in line, if you will, leadership, so that the town continues to function as it should, regardless if someone does retire.
So just to kind of piggyback off of that, I do want to ask the Select Board if we can talk more about the Finance Director position. There was a recommendation that if we weren't ready to pull the trigger on that we could pivot and send the remaining amount of those funds for the Deputy Fire Chief to cover that position for the entire year. And that is something that I want to talk about.
And is now the time we should talk about that, or Steve, is that going to be at our next meeting?
Well, the intent of tonight's meeting is to have the board approve the FY '27 budget. So if you're going to make a change like that, the overall numbers won't change because we would just move that money. But I want to say that the money that's set aside for that stipend would not cover the deputy fire chief for the full 12 months. It would add possibly a quarter. Right now, it's at 6 months. It might bring it up to 8 or 9 months, so it's not enough to cover it. But we can talk about it tonight if you want, or we can hold off. That's up to you.
Nicole, did you want to?
So for me, I'm prepared to vote on the budget, but minus that one item that I want to have us to have a more thoughtful discussion on that.
Tonight or at our next meeting?
I would assume next meeting.
Can we wait, or?
I think we need,
We can?
I think we need to do it tonight.
We need to do it tonight.
Yeah, we should.
I'm in agreement with Nicole in terms of, and thank you, Steve, for offering that as a potential pivot. Again, we were just talking about succession planning, and I don't know, nor would I hazard a guess of when our beloved fire chief might retire. But I think there is going to be a leadership vacuum if we don't have a deputy fire chief in place. So that's my opinion. I don't know where other people on the select board stand.
Can I ask a budget-related question? Is the discussion about where that money's going to be within the town side of the budget going to affect the money that the town side of the budget is requesting from town meeting? Because if it's not, that's a discussion you can have almost any night you want to in terms of the final organization of the budget. If you're changing the number, that's a different ballgame. If you're not changing the number, it's a matter within the select boards to decide.
That's literally what I was asking,
Yeah,
Steve.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I don't need to do it tonight. You can do it tonight, but you don't need to.
Yeah.
Well, I think the issue we have is we need to prepare budgets for the town meeting floor. And without that knowledge, it's delaying the process again. We're already a little, in my opinion, behind the 8 ball on getting the budgets out. We still don't have a finalized line item budget, and this would be a line item within it. And I also want to just respond to the last comment. I had full confidence when I budgeted for the deputy fire chief for 6 months that next year I would be able to fund it for 12. That would not have happened if I had any doubt at all that money wouldn't be available. But that's a priority, as well as the chief of staff position that's also been discussed. What concerns me is that we don't have a finance director in place, and a lot of what I do does revolve around finance. And I want somebody to have authority to manage those finances without having to come through me all the time. And that's why I moved it up on the list this year in the manner that I did, to be more consistent with how other communities have addressed that need.
Anyone?
So I did mention this at the last meeting. I think what I struggle with is understanding how a finance director can also be a / assistant town manager. To me, those are two different types of people. How would we accommodate that for that in the future? And so I was kind of under the impression, we've been talking about this for a long time, going back and forth, and I don't want to waste any more time, and I don't want to keep more things on your plate than need to be, but I also need to understand what that person is going to be, like, what do we envision for that position? Is it the finance director? Is it really? Or is it a chief of staff? Or, I mean, I'm open to anything, but I feel like we started talking about it and then it kind of just fell by the wayside and we stopped talking about it. And I just want to make sure that we're putting the forethought in before we make this decision, last minute in a budget meeting.
So right now, the decision between assistant town manager versus a chief of staff and whether or not finance would be part of that is up for discussion. That's something that we have the next 12 months to talk about. Next year at this time, we'll know if that position is going to be a chief of staff or an assistant town manager. What we can also discuss over the next 12 months is whether or not we leave that finance director role in with an existing position, or if we pull it back and roll it into the assistant town manager slash chief of staff position. So that's something that we can pivot on. We don't need to necessarily have that decision made tonight. I think, to your point, we've been talking about this for a long time. The recommendation from the DLS is 5 years old. Moving forward with the finance director at least takes that step in the right direction, and we always have options with any of these positions.
And when we had talked about what that second in command would look like, I know you had said that you need more time to define that. And I think that's very important. So my concern is if we bring someone in for this, finance director, and then realize, oh, you know what, actually, that should be part of what a chief of staff should be doing, it feels premature. I'd rather have the full conversation and understand what components, you really need and what that job description is. And I do think that's going to take more time than tonight, which is again why I'm thinking, I don't know how long the fire chief's going to be here for. We do need someone else to be second in command. So that's where I stand with that. But Whitney, you haven't said anything. Jen, John?
Just to confirm, that stipend position is not guaranteed yearly, right? So if we obligated the funds this year, next year it could go away. I just want to know the funding, if it's guaranteed or not.
Yeah, and that's why I stated earlier, we can talk about it over the next 12 months. If it makes sense to leave it there, we all decide that it shouldn't be in my office, then it can stay there. If we decide it should be part of the second in command, we can move it.
Sorry, I'm just not feeling well, and we would just like to adjourn so she can go.
I'm curious if you need a vote from the school committee before I go.
No.
Okay, with that, I'm going to adjourn the school committee at 8:03. I make that motion.
Second.
Seconded by Ruby. All in favor, say aye. Aye. So the school committee is adjourned because I'm leaving. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank the school committee, also everyone here. I know I would say this later, but I'll say now since you're leaving. We are in such a different position right now than we were a year ago today, and I really think that we shall be proud of all the work, sacrifice, investment, everything that we've done to get here. I'm very, very proud of this group. Also, just for this point, this matter, to go from there, I'm very comfortable with the budget as proposed. I think that ultimately we're talking about a dollar amount, so I'm comfortable voting on this budget as proposed, and if we need to tweak things on the back end, the dollar amount would stay the same.
So,
I don't think I can without her here. Ultimately, it was a very quick comment.
Let me recognize you. Go ahead, Jay.
So my hope was a little bit broader. There were a lot of bigger issues raised, JBISH, how do we make 5-year plans? I have a suggestion that the boards consider kind of a standing monthly meeting of tri-board meetings so that we don't have to try and coordinate through different online portals, and we just know it's this day every single month, and we can start to chip away at some of these bigger conversations on a longer-term basis.
So as it stands right now, we are hoping to have a standing quarterly meeting with the full tri-board. We attempted to establish an informal leadership group just to have informal conversations. The last time we had a conversation about that group, we decided that it would probably make more sense to formalize that and actually call it an official committee and have an agenda and meeting minutes, and try to start making some more strategic decisions in that regard. That is easier to do because it's a smaller group. It's the chair of each committee and a designee and myself and the town accountant and the superintendent, so that's probably what we're going to go back to. I just don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet. I forget what we called it. I think strategic leadership group or something. Yeah.
And I totally agree with what our town manager is saying. And while I love the spirit of a monthly meeting, we all are pretty taxed out with meetings. So I think quarterly we can accomplish a lot as well.
So the stipend. So I am also, like Whitney, and comfortable with all that has been presented this evening. I think having that funding for your staff to figure out what this position could look like. We did that with the econ dev for so long with consultants and different iterations of that. I think it's actually a smart move. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how it's going to be implemented, but I would support it.
So what are we saying? Are we saying that the stipend will be put aside and then we'll figure out what to do with it? Or are we saying that if we vote tonight to approve the budget, the stipend will be spent on a finance director?
My understanding is you're figuring it out, right? Like you're deciding how you're going to spend it, what it's going to look like to build out a position? No.
So my plan as of tonight is to assign the role of finance director to one of the existing finance positions in town hall, and then spend the next 12 months looking at the town, the assistant town manager / chief of staff position and figure out what that's going to look like. And if that's going to look like it includes the finance director role, then work on a plan to bring it back. But that, to Nicole's point, we may find that there are different skill sets and that they don't belong together. So I'm trying to get the finance director role filled now so that I can start to see some relief with financial management and allow the board and I to work through the details of the chief of staff, town manager assistant position.
I'm just trying to sum this all up. So I guess we can vote on this budget, agree to this number, and we're still going to work out the role of the stipend by the board. You already figured it out, and I'm just trying to understand it so everyone's on the same page because I'm confused now.
Yes, so I guess, I don't want to sound harsh, but yes, I have already figured out a path forward, at least for now, based on what I have discussed with my colleagues and my peers around the area, other towns, on how they're managing finance director roles. But that's not to say that that's a permanent decision. It may take us the next 12 months to figure out what the second in command position would look like. If we decide it looks like it has finance in it, fine. If not, that's well too, because we already have somebody doing finance director work. If we roll it back into that position, and I don't want to confuse matters, but maybe we don't do it right away. Maybe we let that second in command get used to the position first and then try to roll it back in. But I don't know if we're going to accomplish everything we want to with the second in command position. Our previous conversations, we've talked about finance, we've talked about communications, we've talked about grants, we've talked about economic development. All the while, they're going to support the town manager role, whether it's me or not, and be able to manage 16 department heads. So it becomes a very daunting task to figure out what should be part of that position and what shouldn't be. So this is only one aspect of it, and it can change. It doesn't have to be as once and done.
So this would take some stress away from you, in a sense, as town manager. Instead of 3 department heads or 4 department heads coming to you, only 1 would report to you and 2 or 3 would report to that finance director.
Yeah, immediately it would remove 2 direct reports, but it would also be a position that would have more authority over negotiating contracts, or maybe signing contracts, or attending meetings where decisions need to be made, because that would be their charge, would be finance.
And just so the public knows, and I guess this is probably appropriate, what does that cost? Do we have a cost or a rough dollar figure? I'm not putting you on the spot too, but just something rough.
No, so right now, the stipend would be approximately $20,000. That's what's in the budget, is $20,000. And what that is based on is the current financial positions in Town Hall. The maximum salary is $105,000 and change. This would, the HR director and I did a survey on what finance director positions make. It ranges from $110,000 to $145,000 approximately. So we know that at a minimum, it's a $5,000 incremental increase. And then we looked at the middle of the range. So 10 to 45 is a $35,000 difference. Half of that is actually $17,000. So 17 and 5 should actually be $22,000, but I shorted myself a little bit and figured 20. We may not go that high. It's all up for discussion. But at this point, that's the number I'm holding.
And then the select board would approve who that stipend goes to, or is that like department head, or is that our privy, or is that your privy? I know we have new roles at town manager, so I'm just trying to clarify that stuff.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that, because department heads are, appointments have to be ratified by the select board, but I make the initial appointment. I don't know if we would actually classify a stipend as a department head. It might just be an appointment that I would make.
I'd like to make a motion that we transfer $20,000 from the finance director stipend to the deputy fire chief.
I second that. Further discussion?
I just want to know what the finance committee feels as the financial experts of the town. I see them over there just laughing, so I'd like your input.
So it's kind of a new conversation. Finance is really important in town. We do have individuals in town. I really don't think the brand-new assessor coming in would be ready for that position, so that leaves 2 other department heads in the financial picture that are both qualified. And as what I was alluding to earlier with capital is, in strategic planning, is we need somebody in there to look, to take the time and have the experience and the know-how and understand how the town departments work, to be able to look. Just take, for instance, long time, year after year after year. I'll just use the schools, for example, with abating classrooms, asbestos abatement of classrooms. They're $30,000, $25,000, $30,000 a year. Those costs are incrementally higher because they have to hire industrial hygienists for one classroom, when it would cost them the same to hire one industrial hygienist to do 10 classrooms. So if we could take all those 10 projects, put them in one, it would be 60% of the most of the total budget. And how to pay for that? I mean, there is no money in the budget to pay for that right now. So we would talk to the departments, possibly, if it's 50% of the money, maybe see if we can hold 50% of the operating budget for that cost. Earmark it, split it up for 10 years for a bond, if we want to put it as part of a bond. And maybe we can get all this work done for $10,000 a year instead of $30,000 a year out of our operating budget, or $15,000 a year. And that's something that a financial manager in town can work with departments and talk about. I understand succession planning is just as important, because that could end up costing the town a lot more at the end of the day. So I don't know if any.
No, you nailed it.
Do we want to make a motion to make a recommendation? Which way that $20,000 should be spent?
Well, a motion has been made and seconded. Do we want to take a vote?
Are we still in discussion, or are we waiting for the finance committee? I don't want to overlap.
I can't hear you.
Are we still in discussion? Is the select board in discussion, or are we waiting for finance committee? I don't want to overlap and cut you off.
At this point, I don't think anybody's comfortable to make a motion from the finance committee on this, so.
What I wanted to add to the conversation is I believe that through legislation, we made Steve a town manager, and it is his right for hiring authority. He's asking us for a financial request, and I think that this is actually logical. He's asking for us to give a 50% for the deputy fire chief at this time, which we'll figure out next year. And this would be able to start creating a account director, which also is a form of succession planning as well. So I think this is actually very intelligent. I think it's frugal, and I support it.
So I would argue that by saying that, so this stipend is meant to go to a department head, and deciding on department heads does fall with the select board. This is a characteristic of that, and so I would argue that it is within the select board's purview.
Okay.
We can work that out. If the motion fails, we can work that out. We'll have to have a discussion about, who makes that appointment, but I don't think we should get hung up on that at the moment.
One more discussion. Can we just earmark the money, then decide where it goes, or do we have to know where it goes, deputy fire chief or the stipend right now? This way we're not holding up this whole budget thing. Can we just approve the $20,000?
I can make a
Then we
revised
can
motion.
figure out where to put that next meeting,
Steve,
so we can have more time to think about it.
Steve is, I thought, you know what, Steve? You tell us what you want.
It needs to be timely so that we can wrap things up. That's all I ask.
Yeah, I would ask for a vote tonight. I really think that we need to get these budgets wrapped up. We need to finalize the line item budget. We need to get all the town meeting articles prepared. So the longer we wait, if you were going to delay, you would have to take this up within a week at the next select board meeting, well, 2 weeks at the next select board meeting, which is April 6th. And that's already a long agenda, so it's up to you how late you want to stay there on the 6th.
So may I call the question?
I'm sorry. Nicole, do you want to revise the motion? Or do you want to keep the motion as it is?
I'm willing to revise the motion that it be placed into some kind of miscellaneous placeholder. If that's not allowable, I would keep my motion.
Well, that's two motions, isn't it?
No, well, we still have the original motion in a second. We had discussion. Can we vote? Call the vote.
All right, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of having the funding go to the assistant,
That's not the motion.
the deputy assistant,
Deputy Fire Chief.
deputy fire chief? Please,
Deputy Fire Chief.
yes, please say aye.
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 So you say all opposed?
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
I abstain.
So that's 2 for, 2 against, and that means the motion didn't pass.
So I make a motion to approve the budget as presented this evening by the town manager.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
She can have a motion to adjourn.
Here, a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and the select board adjourns at 8:22.
Finance Committee have a motion to adjourn?
Second.